Hello, this is the RPG Pundit, the final boss at Internet Shitlords, and today I'm going to be doing a review of the second edition of Wretched Country. And if you take a look here, I've got it for size comparison with the old school companion, which is about the same, little bit. I think Wretched Country might be a little bit bigger, the new one, but then compared to the old one, and it's crazy, right? Because this one had, I think, like 124 pages or something like that. And this one has 124 pages. This was the first edition. And half of this book was the rules. Because on the other hand, Wretched Country second edition, like all the second edition products, do not have core rules in them. The core rules you get from the Wretched RPG. Or, in fact, you can easily apply what is in here to any OSR system and just plug it in, right? Like, you don't really need to have the Wretched RPG, but you can get it, and it's not hard to get. So, that one's 124 with all the basic kind of OSR rules in it. And this one is 280 pages. That's a good picture. Well, sort of a good picture. 280 pages without, core rules telling you, like, well, what are ability scores and here's how you roll to hit. I'm saying this is a nice looking picture, but it's not a great picture just because it is way too large scale for it to really be usable. It looks really cool, right? What they should have done probably is taken this whole thing out and expanded just the western part and in enough detail that people could see what the town names are and everything along the way. That would have actually been both cool looking and playable. Now, you know which game has a cool looking and playable map? Baptism of Fire. If you haven't bought Baptism of Fire yet, you need to check it out. It's still 3 weeks in and it's still on the top 10 list of RPGs, Drive-Thru RPG's best sellers. And you don't know what you're missing. We have had dozens and dozens of very positive reviews. You can look at those on the drive-through site for Baptism of Fire, and it's already an ELECTRUM bestseller. It's just doing fantastically well, and thank you to everyone who's bought it already. Where else you can buy great products is at the Red Room store, which is where you can buy Wretched Country and the Wretched RPG, but it's also where you can buy the Pundit Files, which is my series of short supplements for OSR games that I put out every 2 weeks. And today, at least at the time of filming, which I think I'm going to put out this video today. So today, the 14th, they have come out with the latest issue of the Pundit Files, or I have come out, I guess. Well, the Red Room has published, has put it on their storefront now, which is the Pundit Files, I think it's number 12 now. The Mendicant, which is an adventure that is actually in some ways a wretched style of adventure. I think they're rubbing off on me because it's an adventure that it's pretty good for almost all levels, and you play. It's set in medieval Chester, where a lay preacher, a charismatic lay preacher, has taken the town by storm, and a lot of the idle rich of the city are flocking to him to become his followers. And the player characters aren't sure, at the beginning at least, whether he's the real deal or some kind of a fraud or something demonic, right? And there's, at the same time, the father of one of this guy's new devout fanatical followers, who is a very, very rich and powerful man in the city, is willing to pay a very large reward to anyone who gets rid of the man in any way, shape, or form, right? Including, like, killing him or whatever, whether or not he is or isn't what he says he is, because he sees his only son and heir is being taken away. So that's the thing. It's a combination. It's not so much a big combat adventure. There certainly can be combat that happens there. In fact, there can be situations where the PCs can get into a lot of trouble, right? But it's mostly an adventure about investigation, and then about an assessment of what one's own morality would be. What are the conditions by which you would get rid of this guy if that's what you want to do, or if it isn't? What if he's real? What if he's not real? And how do we know? So It's a very interesting kind of adventure. It's not your classic hack and slash adventure, but it's a very interesting take on an investigative adventure that makes me think a lot about the kind of moral themes that you see in the Wretched products. Of course, in a lot of the Wretched products, by default, the basic one is that your characters are totally immoral. It'll do whatever, right? So anyways, back to the review now that I've done my advertising for the video. So Wretched Country 2nd edition is, as you can see, it's published in color. The layout is very, very good. All of the stuff, all the details look all right too. So it is, if there's one product that deserves to be like Wretched over all others, it would probably be Wretched Country, because like I said, the thematic of the Wretched verse is the thematic of the spaghetti western, and so if there's one place where it's okay for it to be like totally immoral bastards, this is it. The Wretched Country, But in the new edition, they give you information about like different types. You can have archetypal Hollywood style. You can have traditional cowboy style. And you can have the anti-hero, which is the spaghetti western style. And then they give you a lot of good recommendations of movies and things that are connected there. So all of that is the introduction. And then you get some new rules. And a lot of this stuff is great. I mean, I have to say that when I was looking at this particular, starting in this section onward, I had a real pull to want to run some Wild West adventuring. And, I did, not that long ago, I did a very long campaign that was set in the Wild West. That was completely historical, right? There was no magic, no anything like that. This book does have some magic in it. Mostly like shaman stuff for the Native American people, which you can use or not, right? So it doesn't really matter if you don't want to have shamans or real monsters based on Indian legends or whatever. You don't have to, but they are there if you want to have them. So we've got some new origin roles, which is quite good stuff. You got the opportunity to have these tables basically are going to give you some kind of a slight, theme of your character and some potential background deal, right? And then you have life path events, so you can, I think they directly ripped that off of me, right? But that's perfectly okay. I love it when people do stuff like that, right? Where, in Lion and Dragon and in Baptism of Fire, I have like when you're generating your character. After rolling the stats, one of the things you do is choose your social class, and then, well, not choose. Usually you roll your social class, and then you roll for a random event from your past or your childhood that gives you some kind of, hook for your character, right? And it's a really good way to set up a character starting out to have a little bit of, already a little bit of identity compared to the others, without having to have like some tremendous backstory or stuff like that. So that's good. And then it goes into the section on vices and virtues. Like I said, this is one of the only places where I would have been like, yeah, if you just want to make it vices, I guess that's okay, because this is the very essence of the Wretched verse, But they did put the virtues in because they've been doing that in all of the books now, and that's okay, I guess. And then you got some revised occupations here of different things you can do. Now, of course, the thing that I like least about the Wretched verse system is that you have these like feats type stuff. I would never have that in my game. But I mean, if you limit that to a minimum, I guess it's acceptable, sort of. So the idea that they should get to pick it, I would never ever do that, right? Like I could stand having like perks if you couldn't pick the perks, if you had to roll which perk you got, right? So that might be a way to fix it, right? So a saloon owner, he doesn't pick one of these. he rolls there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 entries, so there you go, perfect. He rolls a d6 and that's the one he gets, you know. And then we get into the section on magic, which this is very clearly not, you know, like how my products, you know, like in the Old School Companion, there's a bunch of grimoires that are based on real historical medieval grimoires, and the magic in them works the way it is described in those medieval magical grimoires, you know. This is definitely not real Indian magic. It does seem to me, ironically, it does seem to me a lot like, I've, you know, having studied the occult in many ways, one of the things I've looked at, obviously, is the New Age movement, right? And one of the things that the New Age movement does constantly is they talk about Native American spirituality, right? There's no such thing as Native American spirituality, not in the sense that Native Americans don't have spirituality, but in the sense that there isn't a single thing that is called Native American spirituality, right? Like the spiritual beliefs, the religious beliefs, the magical beliefs of Native American peoples vary incredibly, literally tribe by tribe, right? Sometimes even within a tribe. And to say nothing of like vast regions, right? Like the Seminole Indians and the the Navajo are going to be tremendously different, you know, to say nothing of the Blackfoot, right? So, you know, but in the New Age movement, there has been, and you know, Native American people themselves complain about this. They talk about like what they call plastic shamans, right, which are like basically fake Indian medicine men that are these are, in this case, real Indians, but that they pretend to be medicine men or shamans or what have you, basically to milk money out of their background, right? And that in most Indian people's cultures, that is looked at, or most Native American cultures, that is looked at very, very poorly, right? And usually they peddle this kind of nonsense, right? This kind of a universalism. Now, I'm not blaming the Red Room for any of that, right? But I am curious. The way it reads is so close to stuff I've read in the New Age books that I wonder if they didn't like get or download a book on New Age native spirituality and that this is where they got the ideas from. It might not be, because it isn't exactly rocket science, right? Like a lot of this stuff, you know, like they definitely have sources in literature and movies, right? And a lot of the stuff that ended up in the like New Age spirituality, the Indian New Age spirituality, the Native American, New Age spirituality is stuff that people literally ripped off of fake things that were done in movies. Yeah, so that it could be one way or it could be the other. It could be a whole cycle. Now, that's not to say that this is bad or anything like that, right? Like, I mean, if you're going to be playing a Wild West campaign and you want for Native Americans to have magic that has real effectiveness, you know, you can certainly use this. You got to keep in mind this isn't going to be realistic, and you know there's wide varieties of magical styles in how Native Americans did their thing, right? Their spirituality and their magic. So it's, you know, it's going to be generic, but that's okay, because I think if the style of Wretched Country is mainly meant to be more about imitating spaghetti westerns than, you know, real historical Wild West, that's probably not a big deal at all, because like I said, in a lot of the westerns, that's exactly what it's like. That's how they do it, right? So then we have some shaman rituals there. The art is, I believe, all AI art, I'm pretty sure. But that doesn't mean that it's bad. It's, you know, the Red Room are really good at AI art. Here we get into another section I wanted to highlight, the carousing table. So you can do a check to carouse, and you end up having a variety of things that can happen. Then there is also the gambling table, which I think is pretty good. Because it's like, and I've had this happen in my games, certainly in the Wild West game, but also in other games that I've run, where people want to like be gambling, but we don't want to just stop the game and start playing poker. Well, I might want to, but I think a lot of my players wouldn't want to. But at the same time, and I would play stud, right? 5-card stud, the poker that was the most popular in the West. They don't want to, and so it's good to have a mechanic where you can just kind of quickly resolve what is represented in one roll by several hours of card playing or whatever, right? I think this one still might be a little too basic. Like, what I would have done is I would have split this number and this number a little bit, but it's okay. It's good, So then we have, modifiers to gambling roll. We have socializing, which is when you're trying to make contacts, let's say, whether it's to hook up with someone or to find someone to hire you or whatever. So those are useful mechanics. The wanted levels is something we already saw before. We have the explanations here of the new perks. And then pistol dueling. So when I reviewed the original Wretched Country, I think it would have been somewhere between 1 and 2 years ago. It's still on the YouTube there if you want to go back to it. In the original Wretched Country, I said that I thought that the pistol dueling mechanic they had there, which I don't entirely remember now, but I remember that it was too basic and it was too uncontrolled by any detail of the character themselves, which was what my main problem with it was. It made it too random. And here they've listened to me, right? They've definitely expanded. They've revised, as they say, the thing. So you have like an initiative phase. And this is very interesting because this is very close to what I would do. And in fact, what I have done in the jousting rules, which you can find on the Red Room in... I don't remember the number. I think it's Pundit Files number 9 is medieval jousting, or is it 10? It might be 10 because Invisible College was 9. The Invisible College 30s. Okay, so anyways, look up if you look up the medieval jousting rules. I have a set of rules for how to handle a joust. I wrote those rules before I read this book, and yet they are very similar. Very similar. So you do an initiative check. Here it says initiation, but I guess, well, actually, no, sorry. Here, I'm wrong. I misread that. It does say initiation because what they're doing here is first you do a willpower check to test your nerves. That is very Wild West, right? Then you do the initiative check, which is a quick draw check, it means. And so then, here you're actually making use of some of your character's abilities. And the character that quick draws best gets a bonus against the other character on the dueling table. Then you do the shot, which you roll a d20 on this table, which is the one-time thing, right? And so it can perfectly happen that the two characters could face each other off in a pistol duel, and in that quick draw they could both kill each other, right? That's completely possible. It could also be that they both shoot, neither of them hit, and then it moves on to regular combat, right? So this is the cinematic moment of the gun duel, right? So I think that's not too bad what they did there. It still doesn't really kind of account for accuracy in particular, which is the only other thing I would have done there. Because it's, I do think that needs to be considered. Well, I guess you get bonus from your small arms skill or gunslinger perk, which I guess the small arms skill could probably be what you actually add to hit with the gun. So maybe I'm wrong about that. If I'm remembering correctly now that I've seen that, the small arms skill is probably the what actually gives you the bonuses to hit with shooting. So I guess it is added in. All right, then we have a section on STDs in the West. That's kind of interesting. I mean, I've got diseases in my game as well, but here it's specifically STD, which is actually a bit of a missed opportunity, right? Because, it's basically syphilis, gonorrhea, and I forget what was the other one that they mentioned, chlamydia, which is fine. Those were all serious diseases to have in the West. But, there are other diseases that would fit in really well, too, to the Wild West genre. I mean, you should have put in tuberculosis, right? Without a doubt. Like, Doc Holliday, his entire deal is he's dying of tuberculosis, and that makes him the worst killer in the West, right? And likewise, you could have done something like heart disease or something, yeah, because there are lots of like the aged gunfighter with a ticker that isn't working quite right anymore, and he knows his time is coming up. Like the thematic in actual history, right? Because I mean, Doc Holliday was real, and he really was dying of tuberculosis, and he really did like live for years past what he was supposed to, on the sheer basis of killing everybody and then and drinking and gambling, right? And in the cinematic, right? Because of how many of those kind of the lovable prospector or the old sheriff with the heart of gold, but actually his ticker is going down, right? Or think of Wild Bill Hickok, right? That he was going blind by the time he died. It was getting increasingly harder for him to maintain his reputation as the most dangerous man in the West and in his time. So, they could have put in a few others, but I mean, it's still good. We've still got like what's there at the time is all right. Now we've got adversaries here, normal and supernatural. So you're going to get a lot of those. It includes stuff like Mewe, right? And stuff that is like from Aztec stuff there, the Nagual. Maybe that's a shout out to the basic expert. Rat things, which I don't know. That might be I guess that might be a shout out to Chris Cox. I'm not sure. Trickster coyotes, werewolves, etc. There's quite a large selection, right? Now, of course, if you're running a straight game, like a game that isn't magical or anything like that, that's going to be less useful. But then human foes also get a number of important elements of it. And there's a rule here about realistic damage. So if you want to make a more lethal experience, you can reduce all non-supernatural health dice from D8 to D6. So there, a bullet shot is more likely to result in a fatal blow. That's a good rule. And then you have, a number of classes again. Soldier, Assassin, Bounty Hunter, Card Shark, Cattle Rustler, Criminal Mastermind, Cult Leader, Desperado, Drifter, Enforcer, Gentleman Thief, Gunslinger, Mad Scientist, Officer, Mystic Seer, Rancher, Ranch Hand, Saloon Owner, Sheriff. So you got all the good kind of NPC archetypes that you need. Section on gear, prices. The list is pretty good. It's pretty definitive there. I'll note that here it doesn't have like a list of it has a long list of guns, but it doesn't really tell you much about the difference between them. Then we have a timeline that curiously begins in 1540. Like, I know, yeah, okay, that's when you got guys going into Mexico and to areas of the West and what have you. Like, starting with Vasquez de Coronado and Francis Drake seems a little bit excessive even to me, right, as a historian. Right? Like, I think that the earliest you can really start talking about the West as we would call it, because like you could start with Lewis and Clark in 1804, but it's not really the West. That's just an empty wilderness, right? Like the Wild West, as most people think about it, I think like the earliest you can get onto it is like in the 1840s, right? Because before that, yeah, you could have like Texas and Texas independence and whatever, but it's really like the 1840s is the earliest thing that even sort of resembles the West, right? Which is when the Oregon Trail happens and then when the gold rush happens, right, in California. But that's more about California than the Wild West. In my perspective, the period when the Wild West really and truly starts is after the Civil War. And it really picks up like you could go from 1865 onward, right? As far as what is the Wild West that looks like what most of us imagine the Wild West as, but the real peak period ends up being about 5 years between the Wild West is so short; it lasted such a short time, between 1876 and like 1882, right? And that's pretty much. It's pretty much it, 1883 is when the Northern Pacific links with the Pacific when the Northern Pacific Railway is completed, and then that's basically like once the train can get you there in 3 days, it stops being the Wild West. Of course, that's one of the themes of the Wild West. The Wild West is always dying. It's never what it was like before, right? Because in 1876, if you start a campaign there, it's the height, Dodge City, the height of the madness there, and all the cattle drives and all of that. But you already have the buffalo hunters saying that the West is already dead, because now the train is coming and the buffalo are gone, right? And the Indians are on the way out, and so on and so forth. That is one of the important themes you have to understand about the Wild West. Is for a Wild West campaign to feel like the Wild West, you have to always have that element that the West is dying, that the Wild West is coming to an end. The thing that made it great was coming to an end, because it's always this thing about freedom, right? The Wild West is freedom. It's open spaces. It's adventure. It's being able to become your own person, to succeed in your own efforts, or to fail, and that. You're not going to be having the forces of civilization and progress trapping you in a cage, But of course, civilization and progress is always crawling a little bit closer. And so for everybody, one generation after another in that Western period, let's say if we go from the 1840s until the 1890s, in all that time, generation after generation, for each one of the waves of people that get there, the West is always dying, right? And of course, that picks up after the Civil War, because at that point, what you have is the Civil War keeps being fought in another way in the West. It keeps being fought in the West by all these tons of former Confederate soldiers that go to the West looking to try to escape, looking to try to have some kind of freedom. And then all of these Union soldiers that go to the West and want to bring industry and progress and opportunities and stability there, And it is very, very notable that in a whole bunch of the most epic sort of stories of the West, when you figure out what the sides are, you realize that it's Northerners versus Southerners, and it's very often that, with a few notable exceptions, right? Like the OK Corral was basically Northerners versus Southerners, right? With the exception that Doc Holliday was on the side of the Northerners, right? But that was because of personal reasons. So, all of that is sort of a thematic you have to have in there. I would have, if I were doing a source book on the Wild West, I would probably start in the 1840s, but very over, an overview, mostly meant to say this is what happened before the campaign starts. And I would put my campaign starting date where I did put my campaign starting date in the campaign, the Wild West campaign I ran, which is 1876. So next we have everything else in the book. So we're there at page 96. Everything else in the book is basically setting material. And it has a variety of different sections, right? So there's this setting called Hellstone. I'm not going to get into too much detail about any of these things. Safe to say that the stuff in here is good. I would rather, if it was me, I would be doing stuff from history. They're not going to be doing stuff from history. They're going to be doing stuff that's based on, the spaghetti Western theme, right? And that's all right. That's cool. And then they have another section. Well, they have several sections here, but there's at least 3 or 4 more, I think. You got the Wretched Seven, right? Like the Magnificent Seven, So a lot of this is coming right out of the the kind of thematics of movies, you know. And then there's one that's particularly interesting where instead of being in the Wild West, you're in the 20th century and you're a group of actors who are filming for an Italian company, you know, Enzo Leopardi is the director, that's doing a spaghetti western in the desert of Spain, right? In the deserts of Spain, in sometime in the 1960s, right? And so they're making a low budget western, and stuff happens, you know. So it's that I thought was very amusing. And then we have a few others here. Where is that? Yeah, there's something with a town that's occupied by an evil. Like I say, there's a supernatural one here. I think there's another one there. Oh no, then we got some random tables here. So you can roll some random tables for like desert encounters, frontier town encounters. It's good stuff here. Mexican Pueblo encounters. Pueblo. It's Pueblo, but anyway. Road encounters. Ghosts. In American Wild West, it's Pueblo, of course. But in Spanish, it isn't. Ghost town encounters. Caravans. Mountains. Oh, no, sorry. Caverns. Mountains. I was thinking of Sword and Caravan. Some loot tables, which are very basic. But it's good. I mean, that's clever. And then you have card-based encounters, right? And now I think in some of the other Wretched products, they've had this, but with a tarot deck. And here instead, of course, it's done with a poker deck, right? So they've modified it so it instead fits the poker card, you know, the card theme, which is good. There's a selection of Wild West slang, which I some of it I have my doubts about. Some of it is very clearly Wild West slang. Some of it I'm not sure what the source is. And there's stuff that is kind of missing from like real Wild West slang that I find kind of surprising is not there. So I'm like, I'm really curious to know what their sources were for this Wild West slang. Like, was it just some random web page, or was it a book, or was it a real big effort of trying to put together a Wild West slang thing? I don't know. Reward poster, empty. The map that we already saw, and no, sorry, actually, that was a different. This is even less sensible, because this is a map of America during the Civil War, right? 1862, I think it said here. So it's showing the Civil War as it's happening, right? But you know, like I said, the real Wild West, the Wild West of the railroad, of, you know, of Deadwood, of Dodge City, of Las Vegas, of Tombstone, that Wild West didn't happen until like 1876. But there we are. All right, and then the character sheet in the back. So that's everything about Wretched Country. I have to say, if you're looking for an OSR source book for running Wild West stuff, this is really good. This is the best thing I've seen so far. Now, I know that Night Owl Games has a Wild West game. At one point, they'd promised they were going to send me one, but they never have. So I don't know what to say about that. I'm not sure how it would compare to Wretched Country. I do think Wretched Country is very good. There are still a couple of areas where I would have done something different, but that doesn't necessarily mean that my way would be better. It would just be different. And so they're making a game that is set still, again, in the context of the whole style of the Wretched verse, right? So it's a lot of it is about, you know, characters being bastards. A lot of it is kind of gritty, dark, very violent, in the not so much in like a, I don't know, Batman sort of way or something. As soon as you say gritty, dark, and violent, I'm thinking Batman. But more in the sense of, like, you know, of those Italian movies, right, where you have these like ruthless men and these scenes of blood shooting out of people's heads when they're shot and things like that, right? And Clint Eastwood and everything. So that's, you know, I think that Wretched Country, the second edition, is considerably better than Wretched Country first edition. And that's not true of all the second editions. All of the second editions that I've seen so far have more content for sure. But this one also, like, I think it improves on stuff that was already in there, but does it a little better. So, yeah, my total recommendation, Wretched Country. I think it's well worth picking up for you to use as a resource, whether you're running in the Wretched game or whether you're running some other OSR based Wild West game. I think you'll find stuff in here that is useful. That's everything for today. Be sure to subscribe and like this video and share this video whenever you can, especially if you like watching reviews, because reviews never get as many views as any of my other stuff. I like doing them, so I will keep doing them, but it really helps if people push up the reviews a bit by sharing the video. And be sure to check out all my products, stuff like the Old School Companion, and of course, Baptism of Fire. And definitely go to if you're going to go to the Red Room to pick up Wretched Country, check out all of the Pundit Files issues. We're up to like issue 12 now. And every one of them has different cool playable stuff. And all of the Pundit Files, whether they're 7 pages or 29 pages, I think is our biggest one, all of them cost about $3.50. Okay? So that's everything for today. Currently smoking Stanwell Pipe of the Year 2019 plus Argento Natural.